statistics report that in August alone, inflation rates rose up to 12% in our current year. Ladies and gentlemen, this can mean that the cost of living for the average class may rise significantly, as the rate of inflation at 2% is already considered high. What will we do if standard commodities become less and less obtainable? Over to you, Ashley.
Thanks, ZIMO. For as many years as we can go back, goods in world trade has been primarily transported by ship, primarily meaning around 90%. However, as some of you might have noticed, over the past 2 years since the beginning of COVID-19, a disastrous pandemic that hit globally, many countries have experienced what is called a supply chain crisis. In simple terms, the supply chain crisis is the result of too much demand, too little supply. Demand for items such as electronics, medical supplies, e.g. face masks, and personal protection equipment have increased since the emergence of COVID-19. Every country has to accommodate this pandemic, including airlines, which is another one of the world's biggest transporters. During the supply chain crisis, cost of shipping escalated, especially in the transportation from Asia to US, with prices rising almost 330% more than a year earlier. These skyrocketed prices were created from the escalation of demand and lack of supply, as well as the labor shortages. With more people isolating because of COVID, there were less labor workers, which caused a ripple effect of delays worldwide, as well as port congestion. Port congestion happened largely on the US West Coast, as with restricted workers, the docks had trouble loading and unloading containers. And now we'll invite Dr. Deng from the National University of Singapore to help give deeper insight on this ongoing issue.
Thanks, Ashley. Global supply chains are still being stalled even 2 years after China's zero-COVID policy has been put into place. When it comes to transport of goods, demanding requirements such as negative COVID tests and quarantine is slowing down supply chains. Same goes for manufacturing companies. Employees work in strict COVID conditions, which only slows the process down. Another example of supply chain disruptions is Russia prohibiting the transfer of 20 million tons of grain from Ukraine as a result of the devastating ongoing war between the two nations. As more than a quarter of the world's wheat is supplied by Russia and Ukraine, supply chain disruptions are going to fuel high inflation in food prices, specifically food made out of wheat. For example, bread. Countries in North America and the Middle East are going to get affected hard by this current issue, as these nations are highly dependent on Ukraine and Russia for wheat. As to the price increases for gas, supply chain disruptions are one of the prime reasons for the increase. Russia has cut the amount of gas they supply to Europe. This caused an extreme raise in gas prices all across Europe. High oil prices can cause the supply curve for goods and services that use oil to shift upward. Gas prices have increased at a rate of more than 35% as traders responded to Russia's plan to keep its major gas pipeline closed. When it gets cold and demand increases, there are still questions on how Europe will replace lost flows from Russia. Thanks for having me. Back to you, ZIMO.
Thank you, Dr. Deng. To view this from a different perspective, we can take Russia's example and expand on it. Let's say that the predominant oil supply is from Russia. However, the exports are cut due to the ongoing conflict with Ukraine. Other nations are forced to higher the prices of fuel because the largest source of it is put to a delay. You can even call it a luxury.